Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, I've got a package here to open up. I'm pretty sure it's a belt. It's coming out of California, so that's what I'm expecting out of there. It's a belt that was purchased in Africa, in Kenya. At least that's the story that I've got on it. And it's not long enough. We've been down that road before. This one's a pretty unique looking belt from the pictures that I saw. But instead of having a whole ramp up here, let's get over here on the workbench. We'll get started. This one's going to go pretty quick. I know I've said that before. I promise this one will go pretty quick. I appreciate you taking time to be within the shop today. Okay, let's get this opened up here. A little note, or it looks like there's a note here anyway. Let's see what it says. Closed is the belt. Please add 1.5 to 2 inches to the belt length. Please use care to avoid any glue or dye on the beads. The belt has been handmade in Kenya. Please let me know when you're finished with the belt and we can arrange shipment. Cool. Oh, that's cool. That is a neat looking belt. It appears, yeah, I can see here where the beadwork is attached through a row of stitching here, and it's a 2-layer belt, much like I make. It's a nice thick layer of leather. Let's see what the weight of it is. We're about 10.5 ounces of leather, and he wants to add only on this end here. Okay, and it's sewn on, which that's not a problem. I think what we'll do is we will cut these stitches loose here. I'll straighten it out. I'll just add some more leather, same color on here, and if we're only going to add a couple of inches here, let's see how much of a bend back they've got. It's about 2 3/4 inches bend back at the buckle. So what I should be able to do then is to cut and separate this. It's skived down here. I'll run that skive into another piece of leather on this end of it here. I'll use these existing stitch lines here to attach the leather to the back here that I'll use for that area here. These stitches here, and probably these as well, will not come into play. So I'll just do dummy stitches through there using a brown thread. I've got brown thread over here. That is really a cool pattern. I don't know if the pattern has a significance to it, if that design means something, but there's a lot of beadwork there, that's for sure. Okay, we'll get into this. We'll start cutting this apart, and we'll figure out how to get that extended. And I should just be able to use the same keeper again, as long as I keep my thickness, in similar thickness here, so I don't need more to go through there. Let me see here. Yeah, it's a little bit of a loose keeper, so that should work in our advantage here. And I think what I'll do is I'll look at how this works for the bend back, and he said between 1.5 and 2 inches. I'll probably make it to where the stitching comes out right. And it's 1.1 inches between this. So I'll probably be adding 2 inches to the length. And as I said earlier, it's a 2-layer belt. So we are not going to touch any of this down in here. All of our work is going to happen on this end here. We need to add 2 inches, which probably, this is marked as a 35-inch belt. And so often when people are buying a belt, they look at their size of jeans. I wear 36 jeans, they buy a 36-inch belt. And that just doesn't work. You really have to go at least, I typically say if they're reliable jeans, 2 inches bigger. So if you wear 36, you need a 38-inch belt. But I've talked with the client on this and kind of determined a approach here. I see that they've used contact adhesive to layer these together and they're sewn. So I'm going to very carefully go in here and see if I can cut these 3 rows of stitches, and hopefully I'm able to get these 2 layers apart here with the contact adhesive in there. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. And right now I'm wishing I'd purchased a stitch ripper. Barry King had one there, and I very rarely do I end up removing stitches, and so I couldn't talk myself into it, but I would right now if I had it here. I'm not in a hurry on this. I'm going to futz along here and work on this slowly here. There's no rush. Not worried about some clock running here. Typically, I have a 3-inch bend back that I do on a belt. And so that would be, this is like 2 3/4 inch. So essentially it's the same. But when I add the leather on here, I think more than likely I'm going to create a bend back that comes all the way back to here, so that I'm not worried about hiding or trying to clean up the contact adhesive on here from where this was put together. And then I'll just reutilize the stitching holes that were created by the craftsman that made this belt. No hurry. I know, I'm not telling you, I'm telling me not to get anxious here. There's not any hurry here. And this, it's brown, but it is so dark, it looks like black leather. So I think I'm just going to use black because my brown would be lighter, and I think that the black would be less noticeable. See that the keeper is glued in place, but thankfully this adhesive they used, at least for this process, isn't as strong as what I typically use. So I'm kind of relieved about that. I'm so tempted to buff up that brass buckle, but I got to be careful about that. That wasn't in the scope, and who knows, maybe that's the look the person likes, so I'll leave that alone as well. And I typically use Chicago screws to put my belts together, partially because it's easy, and if I need to work on them later, it's easy as well, as opposed to sewing them. But I'll be sewing this one together just to keep it in the same look as what it had before. Yeah, I wish I'd purchased that stitch ripper now. It's on my list for Prescott next year. I don't know, I could order it beforehand if I end up with an order. I keep a list over here of supplies from different places. And I think I've said before, a lot of times I will end up using items on that list. You know, if I need something from, say, Montana Leather and he has that stitch ripper, then I can add that to my order to get to the minimum for free shipping. I'll get out some leather. How thick are we here? So on this end, we're 10 ounces. And our skive starts here somewhere, because here we're 6.5 and 6.5, 6.25, and then our skive down. So since this is 10 ounce here, or actually right there's 9.5, 10.5, varies a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a skive on here, and I'm going to bring it back. I may bring all the way back to here. That might be, no, I don't need to do that, right? Because I'm going to bring this other leather across there. So I'm just going to start my skive probably about here. And that will give reinforcement to where we're going to put the buckle on here. Of course, they only had 7 ounces there. Yeah, so I'll do a step skive, and I'll start about here, and I'll extend this out longer, and I'll make it extra long. And then we'll attach it here. We'll get this all figured out, get the hole punched, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to take my new piece of leather. It'll have, instead of my typical 3.5 inches, it's going to have about 6 inches back to here, skive down to here, and we'll glue that in place, and then we'll do a little bit of hand sewing. So I'm going to skip forward. I'll dye the leather and be ready to glue it on here when I come back. Okay, so I have a piece of vegtan leather here, dyed in black, and it is a different color there, but like I said, it's going to be on the back side of the belt. And I also had a conversation with the owner of the belt to make sure we're all on the same page, and we are. So I used my Heritage splitter. I set it all the way down to 0, and then I gently pushed the lever forward to get a continuous skive there. And it's got a little bit of a bobble there, but that's okay. I think it's going to work pretty good there. So here's where that starts. This is going to be where the oblong hole is here, so it's going to come to about here. So I'm past that. So let's mark this here. And I'm going to use my rougher on that, from that line out. Like I've been roughing up some red leather there, huh? I'm just doing this to make sure I get a good bond with my contact adhesive here. And I'm not sure what kind of contact adhesive or adhesive they use there. So I'm going to use this and abrade this adhesive here, and I'm going to see if I can somewhat remove the majority of it there. I don't want to be contact adhesive to that adhesive. I'd like to get down to leather if I can. Let's see, how far does that go? Right about there. Yep. I think I got a good read on it. Okay, let's set up here and we'll get my contact adhesive out. Let me make sure I got my thickness right here. It's like 10 1/4. You got 11 1/2 right there, but that's going to be right where that hole's going to go. And 10 1/4 there, and down to 7 there. So it's going to be a little bit chunkier, but it's going to be right here where it's going to take abuse with that buckle potentially. So yeah, let me set up and we'll put contact adhesive on this surface and on this surface, and we'll get these bonded together. And then I just need to make sure I keep this parallel or in line with this original belt part. So I'll go ahead, I'll let this flash off and set up for my first coat, and then I'll come back, I'll put one more coat on here, and I'll come back when they're tacked up and ready to go together. It's dry to touch, but it's still tacky. And this seems like it dried okay. I was a little concerned about an interaction with that other adhesive, but I think I was able to get down through that well enough. So let's line this up here. I want to line up the front. And I'm going to use a ruler along here to try to help me get it somewhat, you know, aligned correctly. I think if I get close, it'll be fine. I was talking with somebody at the trade show that I attended in Prescott about taking on projects such as this. And their feelings were that it wasn't worthwhile to do this type of work. Now, I get that, and I don't disagree with that. If I'm running a business trying to put food on the table, this probably doesn't get it done. Of course, I'm the one that set the price. But I like taking on unusual projects like this because I think that my audience, I think they find it interesting to see different ways to tackle these issues. Okay, we are together. I'd like to get this relaxed here. I'm afraid to add any water to it. I don't want to do anything with this other leather any more than I have to, because I don't want to cause an issue here in the process. So let's go ahead here and measure down the 2 inches here to add. And you probably know this. It took me a while to figure it out, but you know, trying to measure 2 inches from the center of that to 2 inches of center here and then get all that done, well, you can just hook here, right, and measure 2 inches down, and that's the far end of that next oblong hole. Get this set here. So 2 inches is going to be here. Create my line here. We're only doing an inch long hole. Double check this. That looks right there. So I can set that on that mark that I made. So it's going to be a little bit closer to this end. Originally I was saying it'd be split on here, and I do have some leeway, but I think we'll be fine just like this. I'm using this parallel line to it to make sure that I'm aligned properly. All right. That's going to be our new bend back here for that belt. There we go. I think that looks like that'll work fine. I see no reason why I don't have, I've got plenty of room here for this tongue to work on the other end. And I'm looking at this. It should be noted, I think this is bonded leather here. This belt, I think, is made from bonded leather. I thought maybe it was just the liner, but it looks like it's that way up here too. So I kind of suspected that by just the feel and the finish of the top of it. So that's one reason why I wanted to go ahead and have my vegtan leather lining where this buckle's at, because I think that's going to be a weak point potentially in this belt. There is quite a bit of leather on the belt, especially on the whole end, so I think it'll hold up pretty well, but I don't anticipate this being a work belt for this gentleman. So, anyway, it is what it is at this point. So, and we've got here where this line of holes is at, we've got about 6 ounces of leather, vegtan leather there. So the next thing I need to do, I'm going to come down here and make sure I got this centered here pretty well, and I do. And I'm going to trim this liner a little bit long, just so I got stuff out of my way here. All right, so now that I've got it to this point here, I've loosely trimmed it to length. It's ½ inch long. The next thing I need to do is to get prepared for putting this together. And I don't want to forget my keeper. Let me slide it down here and I'll show you where it's going to go. I would probably, if I was just placing it, I would be right here with it. But there's that line of stitches there. And then we have this hole here from the other. So I'm going to move this over to here. The tongue's plenty long to come through there. So when I assemble this and sew this in place, I'll have a row of stitches here, the keeper here, and 3 more rows of stitches here. And it'll be all contact adhesive from probably this point here down. That should give us a nice strong buckle end of this belt here. But before I do that, I'm going to take my Ron's number 2 edger. I'm going to work on this edge here of this leather, both sides, and I'll get my edges burnished so that they look nice here before I start gluing and assembling this. And I'll come in here and I'll rough up a couple of these areas here as well so I get good contact adhesive, contact with the contact adhesive. So we'll be back here in just a little bit. I'll just finish up these edges and then we'll be ready to sew this together. After I had these 2 laminated together here, I went ahead and took this row of stitches. That's where it was sewn down here originally. And I went ahead, used those same holes, poked holes through the new leather piece that I put on there, and I sewn those in place. And my brown thread was a little bit light, so I ended up using black thread. I think that looks the best there. It's going to be on the back side, but these next ones aren't. They're going to be on the face. But once again, I think the black thread looks better than the brown. But I wanted to come back and talk about this a little bit more. This is bonded leather. This belt is made from bonded leather. And I'm going to sound like a leather snob, but there's a huge difference between a full grain leather like this extension that I'm putting on here and bonded leather. Bonded leather is it's made like particle board. So they take ground up leather, mix it with resins that have to be flexible, basically roll it out and cut it into strips. It's the particle board of leather. And I point that out because it doesn't have nearly the strength of a regular leather. So I'm happy that this area here where this buckle goes is reinforced with this full grain leather, because that's going to add a lot more strength than what was there. This other end, obviously it's the same leather. It's bonded leather here, and there's quite a bit of leather here, so it'll last. And if the person doesn't wear it, really wrenching down on it, it'll last, a pretty long time. But it just isn't nearly as durable as a full grain leather. So I think I've beat that horse there, kicked that dog, whatever terminology you want to use. So I am ready to start assembling this. Get this buckle on here the right way. Got a brass buckle on it. And I'm equaling out this bag punch hole here on these two sides, and try to keep these from getting bonded in the wrong place. All right, there we go. So we have this stitch, this row of holes here where it was stitched before. That's reinforced by the vegtan leather, so that'll give a lot of strength there. Down here to this spot, and then I'll slide the keeper into place here. Straighten out this hump as much as possible. And I don't think I showed it, but this piece here, I skived this down on the splitter the same way, so it was feathered down, and then I cut it to length so that it hits the same place on here as the previous, this piece here did down there. So we get that on there, and then I'm just going to make sure we get this lined up nicely here. And I chose to wait till I had this installed to put the sealer on this part. So all I'm going to have is sealer from here to here. I'm not touching anything on the rest of the belt. So now we have this in place. And I'm going to, let me get this moved here for a second. Just roll this in, make sure I have really good contact here. Stay off of these beads. Okay. So essentially, the repair is done. I need to come through here and put these stitch lines in. And the way I did this other one, I just used a round awl and put the mat underneath there, and I just tapped it through with the palm of my hand on each of these holes. And I'll do that on each one of these, and then I'll sew it in place. And I'm using the Tiger. It's 0.06. This is the thinner one. It'll be stronger than this leather is, so there's no need to go even any bigger, and it just becomes more visible the bigger the thread is. I'm just going to go through here, line up on those holes, make sure I get all the way through. They're not in a consistent distance between stitches, clearly done by hand. There's one there I missed. Those two are pretty close together. Okay, we are ready to sew this now, and I'll be using my Tiger Ritza, like I said, 0.06. That's a lot of thread here. I don't usually use this size, but I told myself to stop buying the smaller spools and just buy the bigger spool. So on this first one here, I'm going around it twice. The reason why is when I finish on the other side, I'll do a back stitch, which then makes that, have more thread there, just like that is more thread. This keeps it looking the same from side to side. So I'll just go through here. All right, so I'm going to finish now here with a back stitch on here. So this is my last stitch through on this end, this saddle stitch. And then I'm going to finish here with a back stitch. That makes them look the same. And then we will melt these off here. And I leave plenty of thread to melt down so that it doesn't want to come undone. And I just mash that down when it's melted with my finger. Well, there you go. I think it looks nice. The belt repair or extension, I think, came out nice. It worked out good that there was enough of the original leather to carry through to the buckle and slightly beyond. And then the vegtan leather, I skived down with my splitter, and it comes all the way around to this side here. So this whole area here is reinforced with full grain leather. It's black. I think that looks the best. A light color would have, I think, shown up more. I used the same holes that the artisan used to sew this all together. I used those same holes, went back with the Tigeritza thread, and I'm happy now, excited that I extended this turn back all the way down here to where it was before. I think that'll help reinforce this area here. So the beadwork is really cool. I know, another hobby. I've been really interested in doing beadwork on belts, and I need to, I guess, go down that rabbit hole of looking to see if someone out there is doing that. And it looks like there's a hole for every one of these rows of beads. So there's a hole every 1/16 of an inch, and then it looks like there's like 4 holes going this direction across there, that there's a thread that loops up over that to hold that in place. I mean, it's an amazing amount of work to put on there. And so with my little repair, I didn't put a maker's mark on here. The true artisan, I think, is the gentleman that did this beadwork. I think it's really beautiful work. It goes nicely with that brass buckle on there. I think it looks really good. So I've kicked this around the horn enough. This is going to be headed out to California tomorrow. By the time you see this video, the gentleman will have this back, and I hope it brings him years of use. I appreciate you taking time to be within the shop today. Please like, share, and subscribe. But more importantly, I do hope you have a great day.